Hey, and thank you for clicking play back in my own room. Fantastic. Family were staying over, which this doubles up as a spare room, but they're gone home now, so back in the room. So what I want to do today is let's have a look at how well F16 Combat Pilot plays, or even does it play at all, on the A500 Mini. Now you guys know how much of a flight sim fan I am, and also how much of an F16 Combat Pilot fan I am, but also, over and above that, how picky I am when things don't run as they should. And in all honesty, I am interested in how they've managed to make a flight sim work on the A500 Mini when, look, I kid you not, keeping in mind they just give you the controller with the 6 fire buttons and a D-pad, and the control sheet, this is just the cheat sheet, has pretty much 40 different inputs listed. How do you do that without plugging in a keyboard? And look, I want to see if it's possible without plugging in a keyboard. Of course you can plug in a keyboard, but let's remember F16 Combat Pilot was a pack-in game on a device without a working keyboard. So the intention is it should work out of the box. That's how I take that. It should be not only work, but it should be playable. So I am going to be quite upfront with my feelings on this one. But before we get into that, because I have already had a look at it, I do just want to say, look, because my initial thoughts on the A500 were quite rushed. Not because I wanted to get it out, I just wanted to get that video out of the way because I had other things to get on with. And it was just initial thoughts, does it work on the big TV, that kind of thing. I'm really happy with this as a device. You know, I've played with Amiga on the Pi-400, which is great if you want to mess about in Workbench and to have a super fast running Amiga. But as you know, and anybody that's delved through the games that come on an image like that, lots of them, I'm saying lots of them, actually don't play correctly. I think it was Barbarian 2, or yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Barbarian 2, was just, so that's a sprite-based game, and it was just running insanely fast. It was unplayable. So you do get into those kinds of issues. I'm not saying they're not going to occur on this, but for the most part, with the pack-in games, it's set and forget. It literally is. There's no setup required. That's the market it's intended for. I have also dabbled with putting WHD load games on. I found I was most successful downloading games from Lemon Amiga. The ones I downloaded seemed to work straight away, so Lotus 2 and Battle Squadrons, which does bring me onto the controller. So for something like Lotus 2, absolutely fine. I'm beginning to love the controller it comes with. Not love, sorry, that is completely the wrong word. I'm beginning to get used to the controller it comes with. But when you're playing something like Battle Squadrons, which is a vertical scrolling shooter, it really is down to that precise detail, especially on the diagonals. I plug in an Xbox 360 controller and that works straight out the box. And even the thumbsticks, now they're still, even though they're analog thumbsticks, they're working as a digital controller, because obviously that's the only thing this understands, but it still works absolutely fine. So I do recommend trying that out if you're struggling with the pack-in controller. But I am absolutely loving this, and it really did have its best use case when I had family staying in this room. Didn't have access to my real kit, so this went in the front lounge, and I could happily continue with a high score challenge in Pinball Dreams that I was involved in. So look, as a device, don't take anything I say about whether or not this works on it today as a knock on this. Do not take it that way. For most of the pack-in games, this works absolutely fine, and the games I've tested from WHD load. But let's see, can you play a flight simulator on it? Can you play the pack-in game F16 Combat Pilot? Does it work? How does it work? Is it playable? And also, does it remain accurate? Those of you who know, I've done a video on this using F18 Interceptor. I'll put a link in the description about how some games, specifically those that do 3D rendering, often do not play well with acceleration because they're designed to a certain clock speed, and when that clock speed is improved, it actually makes things less realistic. It might make them feel smoother, but it does make them less realistic depending on how the game was programmed. F18 is a prime example of that. So we need to do a quick test here. What I've got here is F16 Combat Pilot on the A500. So standard 68K Motorola CPU running at 7 megahertz. And I've also got it set up through WHD load here on the A1200. This is an accelerated A1200, so it's an 030 running at about 48 megahertz. And I just want to see through the demonstration mode on this if these are actually running at the same speed. Because the A500 Mini out of the box is set up to essentially run like an Amiga 1200 with an 030 accelerator. So I just want to see, because then we can not be blaming the A500 if things are out of speed. It's just down to the game, the way the game is programmed. So we can take blame here away from it by doing this test here. So let's have a look. Right, what I've done, I want to try and get these running as close as possible to see if the gap widens. So I've timed the floppy disk load on the A500 because the A1200 loads pretty much instantly. So, oh, damn it. I'm going to go 14 seconds. Okay, so they're very close. On the last run through on this that I just did, you can see this one is still slightly delayed. I was trying to count time and it seemed that even though the A1200 is obviously a faster machine, for some reason my manually counted lag between events here and events here seemed to indicate that the A1200 was running slower, even though the frame rate is smoother, than the A500, which is completely wrong. Meaning that the F16 on this is running inaccurately slow, which is interesting. So we'll just let that run. I'm seeing the delay already. They were only about a fraction of a second out before, and you can see that this is actually, the timing on this is slower than the A500, even though the frame rate appears to be faster. That's really bizarre. So it must be something to do with the WHD load build. Maybe they've tried to fix timing and have maybe overdone. This is an accelerated 030 and that's running slower than the A500 that this game was written for. Right, we're coming into land on the A500 now, and look, what was a 1 second gap, I'm estimating, and it is an estimate, is about, by the end of the demo, is about a 30-second gap with the A1200 being behind the A500. I was not expecting this at all. There we go, landed on the A1200. Absolutely bizarre. Okay, so look, confession there. I was really not anticipating that outcome between the A1200 030 and the original A500, which is what this game was written for. Absolutely bizarre. Frame rate smoother, game time slower. That doesn't make sense to me at all. And it changes the test we'll do at the end, because now really knowing that this is closely matched to this, what I'm interested to see is this running at the same speed as this, because then we know it's running essentially too slow in terms of game time. I don't know what to make. I don't know what to make of that at all. But let's not bog ourselves down with that. That was a weird discrepancy, and by the end of the demo there, you're talking about a 20 to 30 second discrepancy from how the game was designed. Yeah, can't get my head around it. But let's ignore timing for the minute, because clearly this game has issues when loaded via WHD load. Let's have a look at how do you even play such a game that really is keyboard heavy on the A500 Mini. Okay, that's the familiar sound of the A500 Mini. And interestingly, I've realized this TV has a USB port at the back, as does my one in my front lounge. I didn't even think about that. So this is just powered right now off the TV. I haven't had to use the Samsung as I was using phone charger at all. That's literally just plugged into the back of the TV. There's a nice tip for you if you're running out of plugs. Right, so remember, this is a pack-in game. So yes, I do have a USB on this, which is currently not showing up. I've had that happen before. Maybe that's an issue with running the USB through there. I don't know. I have had that happen before. Don't know why it's not showing up. But anyway, I have got one plugged in. Why aren't you showing up? I don't care. Right. Most importantly, let's have a look at F16 Combat Pilot. Now, how have they managed to get 30 odd controls out of this? Well, the short answer is they haven't. But what they've done is not bad. It's not bad. And the secret is, before you even go into the game, you press, try to remember how you do it now. You press up to get the help. And you've got your controls here, so let's walk you through. So you've got change weapon, select target. So change weapon is Y, select target is B, center controls is A. We'll come to that in a minute. And then you've got X is fire, okay? Then you've got the obvious ones, which wouldn't particularly be comfortable on a joypad. You'd want a joystick, but anyway, this is what we've got. And I'm purposely sticking with the controller they provide it with. I'm looking at the out of the box scenario here. Pitch down, pitch up, roll left, roll right, as you'd expect. Air brakes is the left button here. And this is where it gets interesting. You've also got secondary controls. Now watch what happens to this when I hold down secondary controls. Well, suddenly all these do something different. So that's how they've essentially doubled the number of buttons you've got on this controller. Clever. So now Y is chaff, B is designate target, A is undercarriage, and X is flares. Okay, chaff, flares, those are important ones to remember, believe you me. Designate target, undercarriage. Menu is now Autopilot, which is interesting. What was it before? It was virtual keyboard. So that was virtual keyboard as it normally is, and it becomes Autopilot. These then become your left and your right, so they become your rudder, and this becomes increased throttle and decreased throttle. So that's how you start the game. I remember Dan Wood confessed he couldn't even get the engine started. That's the secret, Dan. Hold down the right shoulder and then press forward on the D-pad. And then you've got air brakes, which is this, becomes wheel brakes for when you're on the ground. So that's how they've done it. There's still a lot of controls missing. We'll talk about that when we get into the game, but I just want to mention this now. I would have maybe, I like what they've done, but I would have maybe doubled it up with this just to get a little bit more function out of these buttons, because you really do need it. You really do. So then I could have had my Mfds here, and to be honest, that would have covered most things. That actually would have covered most things. Because it's the inability to change MFDs that is a real rock for your back when you're playing this game. But we'll talk about that when we get into it. Even if they'd have just done shortcutted MFDs, which is a possibility as well. So the MFDs are the multifunction displays that are at the bottom of the cockpit. You need to change those for things like air-to-air combat, air-to-ground combat, landing, navigation. All the way through any mission, you are constantly setting up those MFDs for the current scenario. It's pivotal. It is pivotal to gameplay. Not this game's biggest problem. I love what they've done. I really love the effort that they've put in to make this work. Yeah, let's do this. Right, so I'm going to go to, we're just going to do we're going to do training, we're going to do free flight, and we're going to go begin training. Because then we can see changing weapons and stuff like that. Right, so you're on the runway. So essentially you have to hold down the right shoulder button and press the D-pad up to get your throttle going. We're at 60% throttle. %. Afterburner. Take my finger off that, and then I've got normal joystick control. Pitch up. Now I've get in again to do my undercarriage. Undercarriage is now up. Let's turn the afterburner off just because it's noisy. Now look what's happening. I'm still rotating over. That shouldn't be happening. I'm just going to press up on the D-pad to level off. And then it continues to go. Why is it doing this? Look, if I press right, it doesn't stop rotating when I take my finger off. That's not how it should be. We'll have a look at how it should be in a minute. Why is it doing that? And what I have to do is either center controls by hitting A, or I have to, basically as if I was playing Elite, I have to do some retro thrusting. It's like being in space. And you can't even it up. You just can't even it up. Okay, so let's just center that. What that is doing is it's mimicking mouse control. If I fly with the mouse, that's how you fly it. Because it's trying to mimic as closely as it can an analog joystick. But that's not how anybody plays this game because, and I'm going to use a word here, that's unplayable. So on the mouse, you have to press, I think it's left button to center controls. Yeah, left button. The joystick shouldn't do that. It shouldn't do that. Let me show you what it should do. I'm going to pause that. Of course, to pause it, I'm going to have to go into that, and I'm going to have to press P. Okay, we're paused. Let's jump to the A1200. I hate to say this. I couldn't find a way of changing the controls back. Okay, let's go. And the controls are set up the same on both machines. Let's go the same on here. Training, free flight, begin training, and we'll take off. So, oh, it's asking for, has this been hacked? Yes, it has, good. I've got the manual right here anyway. I could have looked up the page. So let's take off, which I can't remember how you do it on this. Oh no. Ah, let's see, I've forgotten. I've forgotten the controls. It's plus and minus. Joystick. Pull back. Now you can see straight away the difference. Undercarriage is up. So look at the difference. And I'm sorry, I was hoping I was going to be wrong on this and I'd forgotten how you play it, but I haven't. This is how control works on joystick. The longer you hold it down, the faster it moves. That's not a problem, okay? But when you let go, just like with a real aircraft, when you're centered, you're centered. And I'm sorry, that's how it has to be. And I really wish I hadn't done this review in a way, because it makes it unplayable. It absolutely makes it unplayable. This, nice and controllable, you can see that. You can see the difference. Much more precise. This is a flight sim. Let's talk about the MFDs. So the MFDs here are like F1 to change the left one, F2 to change the middle, F3. Or you've got some shortcuts. If I press D, that takes me into dogfight mode. And I think there's a couple of others. I can't actually remember what the others are. And I can't read this sheet without my glasses. But there are a lot of controls that you have to think about. So they've done a great job. For most missions, what else would you need? Eject. Eject is quite important in this game. It really is. I can't overemphasize that. So, let's have a look at the controller. Let's pause that and talk. Let's have a look at the controller. To fix this game on the A500 Mini, and let's just flick back to it. And I don't want to talk in terms of software updates because, and this is where it does get a bit annoying, most users are not going to be, if this is aimed at people that just want to play with it, chances are they're not a flight sim nut anyway, but they might be. And if you're going to pack in the game, we might as well make it playable. So how do you fix this? How do you fix F16 Combat Pilot? First and foremost, I would say, this is the must. This control mechanism has to be fixed. It has to act like a joystick, not a mouse. That is it is unplayable. That is the word I'm going to stick to. For the precision you need, that's unplayable. I'm sorry, it just is. Everything else I think is fine. I think they've done a great job. How am I going to change my MFDs? Well, in all honesty, I'm going to have to bring in the keyboard, go down to, I'm going to change the center one here, go down to F2 and change my MFD to the one I want. Come out of on-screen keyboard, because otherwise I'm locked, and then I can fly again. Now, you're going to have to get very quick at that. So if they're going to make any changes to this, if they were to do a software update, the other thing I would suggest is to not have this as air brake, wheel brake, have this as another set of secondary controls, because then you could map air brake, wheel brake somewhere else and 2 MFDs. Even if you could just map 2 MSDs, or be able to change between dogfight mode, which is D, and something else. I'm trying to think what I would choose. So you've got dogfight mode. Actually, that is the only shortcut. That is the only shortcut. So maybe what you do is you do dogfight mode, and then you do center MFD, cycle through center MFD. And if people want to toggle, change about with these, then they go into the on-screen keyboard. Or, okay, forget dogfight mode, give us control over 2 MFDs. Still haven't got eject in there, have we? So maybe when you hold this down, menu becomes eject. That fixes that. Or that could be the 3rd MFD, then you've got control over all 3 MFDs. I don't know what the full solution is, but there are options. I think the most important thing is have it play tested by somebody that actually plays F16 Combat Pilot, please. I think the testing that was done was probably, does it work for the most part? Look, this isn't Elite Dangerous. That should not be happening. I'm sorry. While we're looking at this, I want to just point something out that I really like what they've done, and this goes across all games, okay? As we are aware, there is a discrepancy between PAL and NTSC. This is essentially the NTSC viewing area, which most games are developed for. The PAL viewing area is greater, therefore you do end up with this black border down the bottom, okay? What a lot of people do, as I've discussed in another video, I'll put a link in the description to that one as well, about aspect ratio, is they will stretch so that the image on an Amiga fits a 16:9 screen, but you end up distorting everything, okay? And some people accept that, other people like myself hate it. But look at this, and let's praise if we're going to be picking at the things we don't like, let's praise the things that we do. If I go to the A500, so look, black bars down the side here. If I go to the A500 Mini, yes, we've got some black bars, but they're certainly not as pronounced, because it's filling a 16:9 screen. That's what it's designed for. So how is it filling the screen so much without distorting? Well, because of this black space down the bottom on a NTSC game, what it's doing is, and I talked about this in that video a little bit but couldn't demonstrate it, they've zoomed the image. That's what they've done. There are options in the menu to change how it reacts with games. But what that does is that fills the majority of the screen without stretching things and making them look fatter or taller than they should appear. Fantastic job. Absolutely love that approach. That's how it should be done. That is how it should be done. Okay, so we have A500, original game, A500 Mini, running very close right now. Interesting to see how this plays out. And I think we're seeing the same thing as we saw in the A1200 already. Look, you can see the cross. That's how high we've got. That wasn't the same runway. That was not the same runway. That's weird. This is Game of the Year edition. So maybe there were slight changes between revisions. That might be something else that's at play as well. So far, I think these are running pretty close. That is a lot faster. That is a lot closer. So at the moment, even though the machine, the A500 Mini, is running as an AGA with an 030, the actual A1200 with an AGA and 030 was running slower in terms of this demonstration than the A500. Therefore, for somebody like myself, aviation aficionado, not really, but you know what I mean, picky about these kinds of things, is not going to be happy with that kind of time discrepancy. This is looking much closer. Bizarrely, I'm seeing differences in details in terms of the map details, but the timing of the demo, I don't see that gapping much at all. It's interesting, the difference in details across the two screens. This has got a fuller runway here. This is only a single runway. It's the same game, it's the same demo. I can't fathom that, and I didn't see that difference on the A1200. Maybe I just missed it because I was concentrating on the timing. I'm sure I would have spotted that. We'll see when we see. You would have seen already when you look at the footage. I'll have a surprise for myself. I'll put a note if it was the same or not. You can see a little bit jerky on the A500 as the hangers go past, not so jerky. So the frame rate it becomes smoother, not faster. I'm very happy with this timing. I'm very happy with this timing. Wow. Wow. I don't think you might not quite comprehend the enormity of this. This, on the A500 Mini, this game in particular, is running more accurately to its original intention, which was the A500, or at least the OCS, than the A1200. Now that's interesting, that's gone into a night demo. I'm going to stop these. And this is where we come to the annoyance of... There we go. So yeah, in terms of timing and game speed, this is running it more accurately than this. This game was written for the OCS or the ECS. It specifies, look, plus the year that it came out, 1990, 1989, 1990, and it's for the Amiga 500, 1000 and 2000. Requires a minimum of 512K. Maybe this is running as the no, it wouldn't be running as the 512K version because this has got a meg. I'm really not sure what's the difference, you know, in terms of those LAN details. Can't quite fathom that. Maybe it is. Maybe it's running as the 512K version, even though the system itself is running as I think an 8 meg A1200. I don't know. That is confusing. The discrepancy in those LAN details. But that was definitely running the same demo. And we've seen clearly there, it's running more accurately than the actual A1200, which is running it in WHD load, granted, but it's still running it smooth. This is running it just as smooth in terms of frame rate as this, but it's running the time within the game slower. This is more accurate than this. Let that sink in. This is more accurate than actual Amiga hardware. You're thinking, what have you just said, Chris? I'm talking about a game that's designed for OCS, it running on this via WHD load is less accurate than this little thing. That's bizarre. That is absolutely bizarre. Okay, so seriously, thank you so much for watching. Don't take this as a critique on the A500 Mini because I absolutely love everything about it. It does what it does really well. And kudos on, look, the timing, the zooming of the games as well. I think this is a fantastic job. There are some things I can't explain, like the differences in ground detail. Could be a revision thing, could be 512 versus 1 meg. So not sure why that would be running the 512K version. I don't know. I'm not going to go pulling RAM out of my A500 just to test that as well. Because for the most part, I think we've demonstrated the game works. The control mappings work for the most part. The one letdown, and I'm sorry, but it really is a letdown, is that this is using the mouse control rather than the mouse type control rather than the joystick control. And actually, if you fix that, you don't need you free up another button because you don't need A to center control. That's not needed. And it should never have been there. So look, you could have that as eject or change MFD or change to dogfight. And then think about, you know, using that as another mapping. So you hold that and then you've got air brake, wheel brake, MFD2, MFD3, something like that. Those MFDs are so crucial to this flight sim. They really are. They need to be accessible without going through the on-screen keyboard. That's just a given. Even if it was one of them, but all three, even better. The thing that makes me sad is this, to make this game work, will require a firmware update. Who's going to do that? Who's going to do a firmware update if this is the kind of product that is meant to be purchased, hit of nostalgia, plug and play, have a game, and then maybe just let it sit on the shelf? But then, are these issues that I've found going to matter to that kind of player? How much do these issues matter to me? Well, I won't play F16 Combat Pilot on the A500 Mini because of the way the D-pad behaves. That is the killer for me, but it doesn't matter for me because, to be honest, if I was going to play this, I would play it on the real thing, and ironically, I wouldn't play it on this. I'd play it on this. Thanks for watching. Great job, Retro Games Limited. So close. So close. I really wanted to see how you'd made this work, and just one major slip up to me, and I am going to use that word again, makes it unplayable. I'm sorry.